everyone! I'm Albert Boris. Wave 6 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass finally released a couple of days ago. Man, I still can't believe it's all finished now. This has been an incredibly wild ride. On this day, 2 years ago, the idea of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe getting more DLC was all but a pipe dream, but then it happened. Now, 2 years later, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has 48 more courses, 8 additional characters, 18 more Mii suits, custom items, and more. I can't quite express just how fun it's been to slowly watch this game increase in content over time. I still remember back when it was first revealed. Most people were anticipating more boards for Mario Party Superstars as that game had just come out, and while we sadly never got that, perhaps this ended up being even more worthwhile. It may not have impressed us at first glance, but it's astonishing how fun I've had with it, from replaying retro courses from my childhood, to experiencing brand new tracks I never would have cared for if it wasn't for this pass. And now, with the final wave, it's all come to a near perfect end. 8 epic courses, 4 new characters, 17 unlocked Mii suits, and a jukebox that lets you listen to the soundtrack on the go. I probably couldn't have asked for a better finale, so you know what? Let's rank the 8 courses of the final wave now. I've done this since wave 2, so let's finish up the series. With all that being said, let's get started with this inevitably slightly controversial ranking. I'll be honest, this is probably one of the hardest rankings I've ever had to come up with. As far as course quality goes, Wave 6 is by far the best one for me, and I do not say that lightly. Up until this point, all waves had at least one track that was more average than the rest. Riverside Park, Sunset Wilds, etc. Here, I think all tracks were well enough at least solid B tier. No matter what, something enjoyable had to take the last spot. And today, that is DK Mountain. Nah, I'm just kidding. It was pretty close though. No, but for real this time. The worst course, for me, ended up being Tour Rome Avanti. Yeah, city track. This honestly kind of surprised me because the city tracks are actually my favorite part of the Booster Course Pass. Not only do I absolutely love geography, but I've always loved the gimmick of each lap taking you on a different route. It adds a lot of variety to already neat tracks, and Rome is another cool city track. The main standout of Rome Avanti has got to be the atmosphere. The dark streets, the foreboding music, and the absolutely magical skybox. It's so pretty. It's definitely the perfect first impression for Wave 6, and it's arguably one of the most difficult city tracks ever, with all the tight turns everywhere. That said, however, I have to admit, it's not really all that spectacular. As far as gameplay goes, Rome doesn't really have a lot to it. Even with its free variants, I feel that it's kind of basic, as most of it is just streets, streets, and streets, and even the areas that aren't streets are kind of mundane. Lap 1 does have you circling around the edges of the Colosseum, but it's pretty easy and boring, especially since they took out the swoopers, and lap 2, I mean, it's there alright. For the first 2 laps, there's just not a whole lot of hazards to worry about, except for some rocky wrenches on the straightaway. Lap 3 definitely redeems the track though, as you get a short glide over a fountain, this dangerous chain jump pit, as well as my favorite part, being able to glide over said straightaway with fuzzes in the way now. It's definitely got a nice progression, saving the best route for last. Although on the whole, I still feel that it's a kind of basic track. No doubt, I still get immense enjoyment out of it, but compared to the rest of the wave, it definitely has the highest percentage of boring areas. But it was pretty close though. Next up, barely missing out on last place, is Wii Daisy Circuit. This one always brings me joy thinking about. You know, it's kind of funny how we have every single Wii course from Mario Kart Tour in the Booster Course Pass now, except for Dry Dry Ruins. Oh well, maybe next game. But yeah, this has always been a very appealing track to me. Mario Kart Wii is home to a lot of amazing nitros such as Coconut Mall, Toad's Factory, and Koopa Keep, although one of the most underrated ones has always been Daisy Circuit to me. And no, it's not just because I predicted it. Because frankly, it is only a circuit in name. The seaside town, orange sunset, and joyful piano tune. All of it makes for an incredibly charming atmosphere, and this remake certainly does it justice. You can still drive on the sidewalks for no reason, and the staircase shortcut is still there, now with the added bonus to glide over the statues, and this roundabout, which was pretty empty in the original, now has fun dash panels to take. They even added a ramp after you exit the tunnel. Honestly, I'm kinda surprised. Even with an easier difficulty curve and lack of separate variants, I feel that Daisy Circuit on the whole has a lot more going for it than Rome Avanti, hence why it ended up slightly higher. That said, I do suppose I shouldn't be too lenient on it, as it's still pretty simple compared to what the rest of Wave 6 has to offer. And this is why I'll never understand why it's the third track of the Acorn Cup, rather than the second. Like, did Nintendo think that DK Mountain was less hype? Okay, maybe it is. I have a confession to make. I wasn't kidding when I said that DK Mountain was close to being last. No, Bertel! I'm sorry! But yeah, to be honest, even though it's not last, it's probably the course I have the most problems with in Wave 6. Compared to the other retro tracks in this wave, DK Mountain is the only one I felt got ruined as opposed to improved. The original track is one of my favorites in Mario Kart Double Dash. Maybe it's slightly overrated, but I love the premise of being shot up a mountain and then having to make your way down through rolling boulders and wobbly bridges. It was simple, but it worked incredibly well, and I enjoyed the Mario Kart Wii version too, for the added half pipes and shortcuts. But this... I mean, it's still pretty good, but I feel like it didn't really translate all that well over with 8's physics. The half pipes are just too far away from the road to be worth the hassle, and the fact that you pretty much have to brake drift during all the turns kinda ruins the pace. The older versions just felt more chaotic. And visually, outside of the mountain, I feel that the color scheme is a bit too strong. However, I still ended up putting it above Rome, Avanti and Daisy Circuit, because while it may have lower lows, it also has some higher highs. The premise is still incredibly exciting, and arguably more interesting than the tracks we just talked about. And I was incredibly happy to learn that they kept the gap shortcut at the end. It's not major, but it's fun to challenge yourself from time to time. And at least the ramps are now actually part of the mountain instead of just being there. It makes it a bit more immersive, and you can even land on the upper edges. So yeah, overall, while DK Mountain was probably the most disappointing track for me, I still had a lot of fun with it, even if I still think they should have picked Dino Dino Jungle instead. But it is what it is. Moving on. Next, we have... well, would you look at that? The whole Acorn Cup ended up being in the bottom half of my ranking. Honestly, I don't even know why, but truth be told, the Acorn Cup is probably the most consistent Mario Kart Cup of all time. Even on my full Booster Course Pass tier list, I ended up putting them back to back for now. That said, I've always felt that the finale is a slight step above the rest in quality. Introducing Deep Mori Trench.
It's Piranha Plant Cove.
Not again with the names.
Why do you even call it that?
You wouldn't get it. But yeah, this track. If this list was purely based off of presentation, this would easily be number one. The vibrant coral reefs, the abandoned ruins, shipwrecks. Not only does the premise appeal to me, but it's also beautiful. Just look at those rocks. Perhaps the most defining aspect of this track though would have to be the gameplay. On one hand, it's kind of Wave 6's new track, lacking a prefix label and all, but mechanically it also functions more like a city track, with each lap taking on a different path. And while I love this gimmick, so it's a win-win for me, sadly, it's not handled all that well. Once again, behind that breathtaking atmosphere lies a pretty simple map layout. And again, it's not bad, and there is at least a pretty decent amount of variety, but in some ways, it feels more like a custom track than an official one. And the route they picked was kinda iffy. We're not off to a good start, as lap 1 consists of 2 long straightaways with a glider and huge drop to break up the pace. It's honestly kind of dull. Luckily though, both the final 2 laps are pretty decent. Lap 2 is probably my favorite one. I love all the small jumps you have to make in the ruins, and the hazards are a bit more difficult to avoid. Lap 3 is pretty neat too. It's a bit basic, but it has some nifty shortcuts and fun turns to take. On the whole, it's a decent route, although truth be told, I'm kinda surprised they didn't opt for lap 2 to be the first one, since I feel like it would have been a much stronger first impression. But I digress. In the end, it's still a really solid track with an amazing atmosphere, and more than decent set pieces. It's just a bit too simple. Moving into the top half of the ranking, however, we take a huge leap in quality. The Acorn Cup tracks are cool enough, but they definitely pale in comparison to everything the Spinny Cup has to offer, and I'm not exaggerating there. The weakest course here was, unsurprisingly, SNES Bowser Castle 3, but even then, I was surprised by how great it was, a SNES course. Then again, it's not just any SNES course, not anymore. For the longest time, no one really paid attention to the SNES Bowser Castles. It was all about the GBA tracks for Nintendo. Even when it came to Mario Kart Tour, all of the SNES tracks were lazily done ports. Except for this one. It's not just the first retro SNES Bowser Castle, but it's arguably the first retro SNES track with a significant makeover, and that's only shining brighter in 8 Deluxe. My goodness, did they go all out. I mean sure, I guess it's still kinda simple in its layout, not to mention short, but it's way more frantic than what meets the eye at first. Anti-gravity, huge slopes, lava geysers, twomps, split paths, riding on top of walls, tricking off twomps, just wow. I couldn't give it justice if I wanted to. It has so much going on, and yet it all still feels coherent, compared to something like Wii U Bowser Castle. And the remix, just absolute peak. I didn't really like the music originally, it just sounded like a slaughter of the Super Mario World Final Battle theme, but they absolutely killed it here. The Final Lap theme even has a unique intro jingle, sending you to the drum section right away. Honestly, I can't believe I ever thought I'd be disappointed by it. I was a bit worried that this SNES track would feel underwhelming as the penultimate track of the game, but no, it perfectly sets the mood for what's to come next. Really, the only reason it's not higher is because the top 3 are that good. Piranha Plant Pipeline is of course not a lot of people know about, but which I think deserves a lot more attention. The theming is kinda bland, mostly just racing through pipes and ugly grasslands, but the gameplay is surprisingly nifty, with lots of tight turns, alternate routes, and unique set pieces. Wait, they didn't add it to Wave 6?
Now we have a problem.
To be honest, it still feels weird that we didn't get it. All 14 city tracks, and even 6 of the 7 nitros. There was just one more. But to be honest, I'm not all that upset. Not only will we probably get it in the next Mario Kart game, but what we got instead was honestly just as good. Opening up the top 3 is 3DS Rosalina's Ice World. Man, I did not expect this track to come. Daisy Circuit may have been the curveball I predicted in the end, but truthfully, this is the track I most wanted. It's surprising because growing up, I didn't really enjoy it all that much. The ice physics were kind of annoying, and I didn't really understand the atmosphere. Fast forward 10 years later, and I absolutely love it. Okay, maybe not the ice physics, but I love how unique the vibes are. I'm not really one to get emotional over fictional media, but this course genuinely makes me kinda sappy. The music is so hauntingly beautiful, and I love all the Super Mario Galaxy references. The gameplay is pretty neat too. It's definitely one of the harder tracks in the game, with the more slippery controls and strong emphasis on split paths. The most notable one is probably near the beginning, where you can either go underwater or tread on thin ice. It's unique because after the first lap, part of the glacier will drift away, forcing you to take the underwater path unless you have a mushroom. I always found that kind of annoying in Mario Kart 7, but this version has a trick up its sleeve that makes up for it. Half-pipes. Not only are they incredibly janky and fun to use, but they can even give you the speed boost necessary to make it over. Or well, if it wasn't for this meddling spinny shell. I don't really have any complaints about this track. I guess the ice physics are kinda annoying, but they're honestly kind of manageable for me these days. All in all, it's an absolutely amazing track for me. One that, in my opinion, deserves so much more love and attention. In second place, we have not only the best city track this wave, but arguably my favorite city track overall, Madrid Drive. Terrible name aside, the quality difference between this and Rome is astounding. Of course, I may be slightly biased because I've always wanted to visit Spain, but honestly, this is easily one of the most dynamic city tracks of all time. See, while I do enjoy the city tracks, I can see why some people have a problem with them, because a lot of times there's just not enough variety. It's usually just streets, and a few times it isn't, the course pretty much has to take you outside the city to stand out. Which kinda removes the point of them, but Madrid is perfect in this regard. The whole track takes place within the city, and yet it's even more varied than the likes of Athens or Vancouver. The first lap is already decent enough, with the sleeping wigglers in the plaza, and the short train station and museum segment. It's not perfect and kinda short, but it's an alright first impression. Lap 2 kinda expands on it, giving you not only a market with swamps as well as a neat gliding section, but the plaza is back again, except this time the wigglers are awake. It's already getting more interesting, and then lap 3 caps off with a giant football stadium with Goombas kicking a huge ball. And it's just as crazy as it sounds. They even build it up with Goombas on the street right before. It's funny, most people didn't really have high hopes on a Madrid track at first, and yet it ended up becoming more powerful than anyone could have imagined. So many different hazards, so many different locations, and who can forget the 3 epic music themes. I was a bit sad at first that Athens didn't get to be in the Spinning Cup, but this was probably an even better choice. It's a perfect final impression of the city tracks with all it's got, and I was honestly even considering to put it as my favorite course overall this wave. But even I have to admit, the best course is even more perfect. Wii Rainbow Road. Wow, what a shocker, am I right? Even more shocking than the fact that they actually brought back the meteor effect when you fell off. Wait, what? Sorry, I just had a huge rush of nostalgia. This probably wasn't much of a surprise. This isn't just the best course in this way for me, but it might arguably just be the best course of the entire Boosty Course Pass. Forget Yoshi's Island, forget Squeaky Clean Sprint, in fact, maybe even forget Ninja Hideaway. This track is nearly flawless. It was pretty obvious that we would be getting the Mario Kart Wii version of Rainbow Road to cap off the pass. Numerous data mines pointed to it, and it had one of the most high quality remasters from Mario Kart Tour. And well, it did not disappoint. I wasn't really too impressed with 3DS Rainbow Road back in Wave 3. It was a fine closure to the first half of the pass, but I didn't really like how bombastic the remix was, and on the whole it was just kind of easy. This, however, is more like it. Really, they couldn't have picked a better final impression. This is one of the longest tracks in Mario Kart history. A full lap takes almost a minute to complete, and that minute is some of the most beautiful chaos you could imagine. It's genuinely difficult, with so many different sections all converging for a final send-off. Huge drops, half pipes, waves, twisty roads, more half pipes, split paths, star cannon, you name it. And it's not just a satisfying challenge, it's absolutely beautiful as well. They somehow managed to flawlessly combine Mario Kart 8's generally frantic atmosphere with the original track's more magical aesthetic. The road texturing is still the same and the music is still that bittersweet final challenge, but with a taste of Mario Kart 8's chaos. All in all, this might be one of the greatest Mario Kart courses overall. They nailed everything. It was the perfect way to put an end to this almost decade-year-old game, and that's not mentioning the credits roll after you beat the Spinning Cup. I'm speechless. What a beautiful way to end the game. But that's just my opinion. What is your ranking of Wave 6's courses? Did you agree with me or not? Let me know down below, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, because this isn't the last we'll see of the Booster Course Pass on my channel. Stay tuned, and with all that being said, I'm signing off. Until next time.